G'day, hi and welcome. So I got my little Husqvarna, 235 here. I worked with it yesterday. Chain's still pretty good. I forgot my scrunch. It's like your plug wrench and all that there. Forgot my scrunch. I got to get a proper size scrunch for this one. Stop. Just thought I'd throw that in there. But it's not quite running perfectly. But I put about 3 tanks through it yesterday. My dad was playing around with it. There was a few things that were hooked up the wrong way inside there. Like it ran okay when I first got it, but it kept bogging out on me. I figured, okay, well, I just needed an adjustment. So then I adjusted the low idle, and it was staying going, and I did another little bit. And then it seemed like after about 5-10 minutes, you couldn't keep it running anymore. It would just bog out. So I figured I needed another little adjustment. So my dad played around with it. He took it. He said it just kept bogging and bogging. He said every time you turn the saw sideways, it'd bog out on him. So we figured it was probably the hose in there was not. There was probably a leak in it or something. It did turn out that there's a little O-ring. I'll show you. My dad just put a new O-ring in there. It's not probably the right size one. That was leaking, so maybe there was air coming in that way. I don't know. But I ran it yesterday, and I had to kind of rev it to keep it going, and it did bog out on me a couple of times, but it cut really well. So I think it's just adjustment issues, and I think the more I run it, the better it's going to get. There could be stuff still, from sitting, even though there was no fuel stored in it. Just sitting, sometimes things just corrode. Like regular corrosion, not fuel related. Like there's no fuel in there, but the jets and all that get kind of clogged up. And it seemed like on the last tank it ran the best. And I massacred a whole bunch of these dinosaur hiding sumacs there. This one's gonna have to die pretty soon. You're gonna die, sumac. You're gonna die. I've been fighting with these sumacs my entire life. Since I was a kid, I've been cutting these things down. That one's getting a little bit big. I do like the look of them, but they're quite evasive, and they'll take up your property really quick. So I cut some down. I was clearing while by a fence. I did hit the freaking fence once yesterday with this one, and once with that one. I can't have anything nice. But this saw is a dandy little cutter when you get the revs and the whatever. So it wasn't 4-stroking too much. It just seems like just a matter of, like my dad said, like when he was trying to adjust it, that it was really finicky to adjust. And I think, some saws are like that, so I think this was just finicky to adjust. But once we get it tickety-boo there, I think it's going to be just a dandy little saw. But that's about 3 times I've used it for work. So I'm not going to say it's a good saw or a bad saw. I haven't owned it long enough. I'm still on the hook for this one, labor-wise, for another few hours of work. But I think it's going to turn out long-term to be a really good little saw. Very nice to play. I mean, worked with it all day yesterday. But if I was going to recommend between the two saws, the 180 and the... even though there's an older one, this thing is just... it's so angry. I forgot my scrunch yesterday, and I just left the chain like that. It's like, well, cut the whole day like that. I had to sharpen him up once. I haven't had to touch the chain on this one yet, but I don't think I have the right file sizes. That's my problem. So, yeah, the next time I'm out and about, I got to stop in at the still shop and, maybe bring a couple of saws with me. Just say, okay, I need a file that fits this, a file that fits that, and go from there. What are you so angry about? You would cut down the sumac too. You would cut down the sumac too. You say, maybe I would, maybe I wouldn't. You can't trust the squirrel. Very noisy little squirrel. But yeah, other than that, seems like a decent saw. This, I never liked these. I don't think anybody ever does, but what I find is, like, once you start it, you don't have to do it, but do this. It says 6 pumps, one pump that 6 times, and pull the choke, and then pull this 3 times, and then put it in, pull it 4 times, and then pull. That's just the guide. Cold startup, it'll start within 2 or 3 pulls. I usually do on the cold, maybe if there's fuel in the bubble like that, I might give it 2 pumps and then pull it. I don't do the whole flood it and then see if you could dry it out and like, so you don't have to usually go through that kind of extent, but that's just kind of like, you know, kind of like almost a sure way to start it. So it says like, okay, so pump it 6 times, choke, pull it 2 times, then, or choke it, and then pull it, 3 times, then put the choke in, pull it 4 times, and then pull it 5 times, and it should go. It's usually not quite that elaborate. A lot of times that stuff is just overkill. You pump it 3 times, you choke it, you pull it once, you put the choke back in. If you hear a sputter, put the choke back in right away. So maybe you pull it twice, and as soon as you hear that sputter, put the choke back in, and usually 1 or 2 pulls, and away you go. So it's, but I'm glad they do have the instructions on it, because, you know, for people that, you know, like the homeowners type, or like the my first chainsaw type. As a first chainsaw, well, I can't recommend a first chainsaw, because it depends what you need to do. For somebody who's just doing light branches and stuff like that, because if your first chainsaw is requiring to cut that down, this is not the job. This is not the tool for that job. But you'd massacre all the branches if this tree fell down. You could massacre all the branches with this. You know, pretty sure. Yeah, there's not a branch on here that you couldn't cut up with this. It'd be a bit slow, but, you know. But normally the way I run my saws is I run this for a tank, I run that for a tank, run this for a tank, run that for a tank, and that way these things never really get super hot, where these guys, when they're running, you know, good, they just run all day. But even these guys, I'll cycle them. I never got the 270 full, you know, hot rodded whatever, and I can't wait till I do, because that one, it does seem to have a bit more of a cutting than this, even though they're both 50cc saws. That's a slightly heavier saw, so it tends to drop through stuff a lot faster, plus with the ported head. But getting back to my little Husky here, so far I'm liking it. Just got to get the finickiness out of it. Once I get the finickiness out of it, I'll be able to give you a better review. Like, I mean, I just did the MS260 review, but I've had that guitar, that saw for 13 years, and it's been headache free for 12 of the 13 years. It only kind of died on me last year, and I'm sure it's not beyond recoverable. You know, I would definitely reinvest in this saw for sure. But one like this, I don't know. This one for sure, 100% buy 2 of them. This one, I don't know yet, but this one's just whatever. But anyway, but I used them both yesterday. I tried to put my bias on this one yesterday. So even though I don't fully own it yet, this one I now fully own. The deal is the homeowners that I'm getting these saws from, they don't want money for them. They want labor, because they can't find people to work to do the stuff they want to do, because they only need a little bit of stuff done, really. So it's not like they can give somebody like seasonal employment or whatever. So a guy like me comes along and says, yeah, okay, I'll do a couple hours for you or whatever it is, and it's worth it. So this saw has already paid for itself several times, and now I own it. And it paid, you know, earned itself. If I divide everything out between the 3 saws I had yesterday, I had the Echo with me. Between this one, the Echo, and that, and my whippersnipper, if I made $110 yesterday. So I would say, if I divided it out on the time that I did, I'd say I used this one the most. So I'd say this saw probably earned me about $40 yesterday. But if I break it up into, okay, I only used the whippersnipper for maybe about 20 minutes or so, I'll say, okay, well, the whippersnipper made the $10, and everything else made like 90 or 30 some odd dollars yesterday, you know, in you know, whatever. So this saw is already probably, out of the $300, I mean, a new one like this is about $500 to $600. It's already made probably close to $100. I don't own it yet, so it will earn its keep very quickly, and then after it earns its keep, I'll just hand it over to my dad. he seems to really want this one. It's a pretty little saw, it really is. But yeah, so using it cuts great. It's good for small stuff. It's finicky to adjust. That's the only thing. Easy to adjust, but like easy to access. Maybe if I'm not dropping it all over the place there, but easy to access if you have the right adjusting screwdrivers, the nut drivers, to adjust it. which you can get. The dealership will not sell you that, but you can pick them up at Canadian Tire. You can get a generic kit, and it usually will fit stuff like this. Just just do your research. You'll see what you got to get, and then you learn how to adjust it yourself. Be careful adjusting your saws because you can blow them up. Getting the sweet spot is the hard part with this little saw, but once I do, because it seemed like after the third tank yesterday, it was running a lot better. It's just I had to keep kind of, like if you let off the trigger and just let it idle, it would eventually just die out. It's kind of like you couldn't leave it where I could leave it on the ground for 10 minutes idling. It doesn't matter. So I think it hasn't been run enough, which is a problem you get with a lot of used saws. Is they look brand new, and this one, like I say, is like new, but it probably hasn't been used enough. So anyway, yeah, that's where this one's at anyway. I like it. Not going to give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down. It's earning me a little bit of money. It's finicky to adjust.